bells and bewits.
Hello, Glenn with Falcon Quest Birds of Prey. Today we're going to talk about, you guessed it, bells. Bells and bewits. That's the topic for today. First of all, I want to start with the bell itself. There are many, of course, there are many different shapes and sizes of bells, and most of you falconers, you know all of this already. I understand that, but maybe during this video you'll hear something that you've not heard before, maybe a tip that you hadn't experienced, and maybe it will help you with your falconry experience. For those other viewers that are just learning about falconry, hopefully this will be interesting for you as well. Here we go is a bell, and I'm going to just show it to you up close. A bell with a bewit on it already. So that piece of leather. Just to give you the basic design. You have this comes detaches. Okay. This goes around the leg, and you put this. There's a loop here. There's a button there. The same button that when you make a jest, same button, same method of making it. So if you've seen my how to make jesses, and so now this goes around the leg and you have your bell, and that's the basic fundamental design of the bell. All right, now let's talk about bells. First of all, there's good bells and there's, let's say, crappy bells, and depending what you buy, the falconry supply catalogs have a very large supply and a selection that we can make. The first thing that's important about bells, when you buy bells or you are using maybe used bells or whatever, is the different, okay, listen to this. Now listen to this. There are two different sounds. The same bell, but they're different sounds from the same bell. This is important because when you listen to this bell, your ear is going to pick that up pretty quickly. If you listen to this bell, your ear is also going to pick that up quickly as well. But when you listen to them both together, you're getting two different sounds coming to our ears. This does a couple things. One, it helps us triangulate where that sound is coming from. So if we have a hawk, for an example, out in the trees and we can't see the bird and we start hearing the bells, when we start hearing two different sounding bells, it's easier for us to triangulate where the sound is coming from. And it's easy for us to find our bird. You heard how well, this is, to me, this is a great sounding bell. I love the sound of this bell. Doesn't take much movement to make noise. It has a real crisp sound, so if it's a wintry day, a cool day, that sound will just travel forever in the woods. But not all bells sound like that. Now here is a really bad bell. Can you even hear that? That's a horrible bell. This is junk. This is the same bell, but it's a better sounding. Now, something you can do with this bell that might work, and I've done this several times, is you go and you get a frying pan that you might never use, or you're about ready to throw it away, you buy another one, put it on your burner, on your stove, heat that pan up very hot. Put your bell on there, and that heat can make a difference. There's a term for it, it escapes my memory right now, but when you heat that metal up, it does something with the atoms, and it will actually start to resonate much better oftentimes. However, to get a bell ringing and resonating good again, remember, use an old frying pan. I ruined one of my wife's frying pans one time, and that wasn't a pretty sight. Use an old one, because sometimes that metal, depending what kind of bell you have, sometimes with the heat, the outer part of that metal will stick to your frying pan, so caution on if you do that. And so I need to replace this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new bewit. And you can buy these, of course, in falconry supply catalogs, or you can make your own. Now, here are some typical leather jest straps This is kangaroo. I love kangaroo. Research it. Kangaroo is very good leather. But what I tend to do with bewits and a lot of times my anklets is I'll use scrap pieces of leather. Here's a scrap piece of leather that I had that I was going to make a leash extender for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use, and oftentimes you can just use a scissor and cut this leather just using a scissor. If not, you can use like an X-Acto knife, this type of thing, to make your leather cuts. Of course, you need some kind of a hole punch, some kind of a leather punch. But I'm going to recondition this, remake this, and I'm going to make me a brand new bewit that I can put on this bell. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to need to make this leather thinner. It's too wide. See the size of this bewit? See the width of that leather? So I need to trim it this way. So I made my leather much thinner. I put a point on this end. And I want to show you, I took the bewit off of the bell. And I want you to see the basic design. Okay, so you have the hole here. Of course, I have a jet flying by. Hopefully it's not too loud. That goes around the button. You're going to notice this notch right below my finger. There's a notch. And then there's a hole in the center. This hole and that notch, this end is going to go through that hole. And where it wraps, right there is where the bell's going to attach. That way the bell cannot slip up and down that leather. I want to show that to you again for those of you that are interested in this and want to get some details, some facts. See the two notches? That's done with a leather punch. There's the hole in the center. This pointy end right there is going to go through that hole right there. The space between my fingers right there is where it's going to wrap around that top piece of the bell. Okay? And that's the fundamentals of keeping that bell from sliding and moving on the bewit while it's on the bird. So I'm going to make these cuts. Basically what you do is from end to end there, I'm just going to use my leather punch on the smallest level, make a little hole, make a slit. I'll use my leather punch, make a little hole there. And I'll just do like half of a hole on either side. So I'm going to go ahead and make these. And then I'm also going to make my button. For those of you who have not seen it, please go to my how to make jesses. I have very detailed how to make the button, the end of it. But basically, remember, for those of you that know, you make 3 folds on top of each other, or 2 folds, I mean, which makes 3 layers. So you get a little square like that. Then I'm going to take my leather punch and I'm going to punch a hole right in the center of that. And this whole thing is going to come through, wrap through, and that's going to make the end button. Okay, I go into much more detail on my Jess video on how to make this end button. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make these, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, here we go. Let me turn my camera thing here. All right, I went ahead and I moved to a different piece of leather. The other one was a little too short this way. So I went ahead and got a little bit longer piece. I have my 3 holes in there. What I do is I just take a pencil and I put it through each hole because it's sharp, it goes through. I wet my leather a little bit so it's a little bit more pliable, and I work that pencil through there to make that hole a little wider. Okay. Then what I'll do is when I fold it back up, my fold, lining up my holes, and then I fold it over again. So all 3 holes are lined together. I'm going to take this end and come through all those holes, pull it through, and that's going to make the button. Well, by widening those holes a little bit, it makes it a little bit easier to do that. And wetting the leather will cause those holes a little bit easier to make them a little bit wider. All right, so I have it started now. But this is small, detailed stuff. This is smaller than making a Jess. I use little pliers like this, and I get that end started in there, and then I'll grab a hold of it like this, and then I'll pull that end through and using these pliers. You can use your teeth if you want to, but you might break a tooth. So go ahead and use this. Works really good. You just grab a hold of the end and you just pull it through like this. You can see I have it all done now. There's my button. There's my hole. There's my 2 little half holes on either side. Trying to make the color so you can see it best on the video. I made my slit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bell, slide this in the top of the bell. My leather is about the same thickness as that top of the bell. It's going to go in there like that. The hole is on one side, the notches are on the other side. I'm going to bring this around and go through that hole now. I'll get my plier and I'll pull it through that hole and we'll almost be done. All right, I pulled that leather through that hole. You can see now this bell is not going to move up and down this leather. It's fixed there. It's not going to move. And now when I put this on my bird, I'll pull this around where this hole, where that slit is. That will go over the button. I'll pop that button in there. Just like that. Now some would say, well, just buy the stinking Bewit and don't have to go through all that process. Of course, we can buy these things. I mean, that makes it easy for us, and that's a good way to do it. And I buy a lot of my stuff. I mean, I don't make swivels. I buy a really good quality swivels made for falconry. Some things we buy, some things we can make ourselves. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed something about this video. For many of you, I keep looking, you might see my eyes looking. Well, we're just starting the migration here. We're in the first part of October and birds are moving. It's a perfect migration day. And I keep picking out these red tails zooming by. But anyway, I'm focused now, and I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and I hope there's something informational here that maybe you had not seen before, maybe it was interesting.
And so it's kind of like squirrel. Well, it's not squirrel, it's more like bird. And because over the years, I just trained my eyes. I'm always picking things up.